Good morning, everyone. We are very excited to have you with us today. My name is Amy Julian, and I'm the director for the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support at Illinois State University. We are here welcoming you to the webinar on strategies to support individuals with autism spectrum disorder during the COVID-19 pandemic. This presentation is brought to you by the Autism Training and Technical Assistance Project at Illinois State University and is funded through Illinois State Board of Education. Our presenter today is Nikki Michalak, and she is going to do a phenomenal job. I do want to start off and tell you just a little bit about our center. ICSPS creates, supports, and delivers professional development for career, technical, and adult education, and we really focus on access, equity, and transition for educational professionals across Illinois. We are housed at Illinois State University, and this particular project, the ATTA project, is funded through the Illinois State Board of Education. So without further delay, I'd like to introduce our speaker today, which is Nikki Michalak, and she will take the floor. Good morning, Nikki.
Hi.
Real quick, couple housekeeping items for everyone. I apologize. All of the attendees are in listen-only mode. If you have questions, please post those in the question box. We will be responding to questions throughout the webinar. If you have a question, and we do have a large capacity of individuals on today, so if you do have a question and want to raise your hand and you're confident your mic's working, we might be able to have time for that. We'll see how the webinar progresses. And also, all of these materials will be shared with all registrants at the end of the week, and then will be posted on the Autism Training and Technical Assistance website. So with that, now, Nikki, please take it away. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. Amy gave us a quick intro. We are funded through the Illinois State Board of Education. We are a project that has been around for about 3 years, and our main goals are developing resources and supports for individuals with autism who are transitioning out of high school into the workforce. So we have a website. The Autism Training and Technical Assistance Project's website is autismcollegeandcareer.com. And as you see on your screen right now, there are 6 different portals in which individuals can access information. So when the grant first started, we brought stakeholders together from across the state of Illinois, and together they helped us identify what are those areas or who are those people that need resources as we talk about transition from high school into young adult ages. And so the areas that we've identified and prioritized include the secondary system, young adults with autism themselves, and they were a part of creating a lot of the resources and materials that were developed, the post-secondary system, community members and communities, families, and then employers. And as you navigate through that website, you'll see that there's a lot of resources for the secondary system, there's a lot of resources for young adults, a lot of resources for post-secondary and employers. We are still building resources for communities and families. So as Amy mentioned, we do have a lot of individuals on the call today, which is very exciting because this is a time where we need to come together and develop supports and share ideas and share resources so that we can be the best that we can for any individual or anyone who has related behavior and communication needs. So many of the strategies will be shared out with you today. We are actually creating a document that is full of resources. And so linked to that document, there will be many resources, many visual strategies, many schedules, many behavior supports. And so all of those are being housed in a Google Drive right now. And so you will have access to many of those files, many of those resources. Some of them are resources that we have created, so they are able to be manipulated. So I think a lot of them are Word files or PowerPoint files. And so those you can download and you can adapt or modify to meet your needs or the needs of the individuals in which you are supporting. And then you'll also have access to that guidance on what strategies are going to be most effective. So I am a problem solver. I love talking and connecting with people, so please stay in contact after today. I did want to start off though with a quick update on right before Autism Awareness Day, which was April 2nd, so just a few weeks ago, the CDC did release the new prevalence rate, and we did see an increase in that rate of autism as was suspected. So the current rate is 1 in 54 individuals have an autism spectrum disorder. And that is data from 2016 from 11 communities across the United States. Boys are still 4 times more likely to be diagnosed than females, which makes the prevalence in boys about 1 in 37, and the prevalence in females 1 in 51. There are some other recent trends that I thought were pretty interesting. More children are being evaluated at younger ages. So we might tend to see that average age of diagnosis go down, which will be good. And for the first time, the prevalence in Black and white children is the same, which indicates that we're doing a better job across the country identifying children in underreached communities. So that's some good information to share. In our state, in Illinois, I always like talking about how many students are we serving. So this is data from the 2017 and 2018 school year. And what this shows us is that there are 27,131 students in the state of Illinois who receive services underneath that eligibility criteria of autism spectrum disorder. And we know that that is not everyone. We know that students receive services in other disability categories, and there are many individuals with autism who do not have an educational impact. Therefore, they may not receive services through an IEP. Maybe they receive a 504 plan, or maybe they don't have any services at all. And so I am suspecting that we will see the 2019-2020 numbers probably pretty soon and have a better representation of what is currently being served in the school system. So before we begin, we know that the spread of the coronavirus has resulted in unprecedented changes to the daily lives of children with autism, their families, and our communities. And these challenges are just so hard for an individual with autism who thrives on consistency, who lives for structure, and thrives off of all of those routines, the daily routine of getting up and getting breakfast, showering, changing clothes, grabbing their book bag, getting on the bus, getting off the bus, having their schedule presented to them by their teacher, and then navigating their school day. And so these changes are so hard. And in addition to that, many individuals with autism, as you know, have difficulties with comprehension, breakdowns in communication, and difficulties with understanding abstract language. And then oftentimes we see some people have an insistence on sameness, which often can lead and increases rates of anxiety and depression, which during this time is probably very, very heightened. So many of these individuals also receive very specialized instruction from their teachers at school. And so that is just kind of setting us up for a little bit of a disaster for many students because of the significant changes in routine, and the school day looks very, very different now. So we were asked to develop some resources and strategies. And so what you're going to see today is representative of a lot of that information. There are some great resources out there that other states are beginning to put out. And so there's links to that information as well. So what we have done is identified some strategies specific to understanding how an individual with autism might be successful throughout some of these changes. And so what you see right now on your screen are some of those strategies that we've identified. And we want these strategies to be resources of ideas to help families and caregivers through these unpredictable days and help make remote learning or working from home just a little bit easier. So it might take some time and effort because a lot of these strategies aren't going to be a perfect fit for every individual. but they are going to be wonderful resources that you can take and hopefully utilize to help meet the needs of the individuals that you are working with. So I always want to preface it with, we're going to talk about a lot of strategies. I'm going to highlight many, many different ideas today. But when we want to implement, we truly only want to choose one or two strategies to try at first. It may be easiest to start with a strategy that you've used in the past, or select a strategy that addresses an issue that you're currently experiencing, because we want the strategy to help and relieve stress, not increase stress. So after a few days of successful implementation or a few weeks of things kind of working, that's when I would recommend adding in another support or another strategy. Don't overwhelm yourself in trying to implement and throw lots of different things in place at one time. We don't want to stress anybody out by putting too much in place too quick. So, and also as you're identifying what strategies to implement, it's also really helpful if you are able to involve the individual with autism in that decision-making process. Have them identify where they might need some help and then what strategies might be most helpful. So we're going to begin with identifying what is good information to share. We probably need to start with sharing accurate information. There's a lot of information out there that's very scary. I'm sure you, as I, am avoiding the news right now. I've turned off a lot of my social media just because it's overwhelming and there's so much negativity and we don't know what's accurate information anymore. So what's very, very helpful is to make sure that we're providing information about the COVID virus to individuals with autism. We want to make sure that we're giving accurate information on how it is spread and how to reduce your risk of being exposed to the virus. So we have lots of different strategies, and one of the ones that we're going to talk about, as I'm sure you've seen, are social stories. And so anytime we want to talk about COVID or Corona or develop any of these strategies, we want to make sure that we're using concrete language and avoid terms that might be abstract, such as idioms and metaphors, because they have multiple meanings, and that's very confusing for an individual with autism who is a very literal thinker to understand. So when we use direct and clear language, that helps an individual with autism take in that information. And we're going to talk about different strategies. Social stories is one of the strategies that we're going to highlight, and it is an evidence-based practice for individuals with autism, or also known as social narratives. And a social narrative is a story that describes a social situation by providing relevant cues, explanations of the feelings and thoughts of other people, as well as a description and of that appropriate behavior in which you want an individual to engage in. Individuals on the autism spectrum benefit from receiving information in multiple formats because they often might have receptive or expressive language barriers. So here's an example of a social story, and this will be one that you'll have here. There's actually two of them. One of them, the one on the left, is one I created. And it is a story that uses a lot of language. It has a lot of words on there. So this would be for an individual who can read or who can take in a lot of verbal language if someone is reading it to them or is a reader themselves. And then the other resource on the right-hand side is a wonderful resource that is floating around the intranet right now and is just a wonderful less words, more visuals, more pictures to help describe what is going on. And so these are both great resources and will be available to you if you would like to use them and manipulate them to meet the needs of the individuals that you are working with. So the next area that we're going to cover is making sure that we support the communication needs of individuals with autism. Children and young adults oftentimes may have difficulty articulating how they feel especially when there are stressors and anxiety and unexpected changes. And I think the last 5 weeks of my life have really been filled with unexpected changes. There's a lot of fear and frustration that some people experience, and lots of worry may be expressed through behavior that you might have not seen previously. And so you might see an increase in tantrums. You might see somebody who withdraws and doesn't want to engage in activities like game night or other family activities that they were engaging in. And we also might see some breakdowns in expressive language, as we often see when stress and anxiety increases. So one of the things that might be helpful to do if you are seeing increased behavior at home is go back and provide some additional communication supports. And those would be just to support that individual so that there are words that are available for them. What happens is when that stress level increases, individuals lose the ability to access their words. And if we can provide that in a visual format, individuals have access to those words quicker, they don't go away, they're not transient, and they're there for that individual to be to use. It also might be helpful if you are working with a school age individual to reach out to the teacher, because I'm sure there are multiple communication supports that are in place throughout the school day. And I'm sure many teachers share those home with the parents and families. However, it might be helpful right now just to reach back out and ask if there's any additional communication supports. I know scripts are very, very helpful, and those are like written phrases that a teacher might use. And I'm sure at home, parents have different scripts and different supports for communication. But now would be a really good time to make sure you have additional communication supports in place. And that might just be a picture. And it could be a hand-drawn picture. It could be a picture from Google. There are lots of different ways that you can access visual strategies or pictures right now. One of my favorites is Lesson Pics. And it is, I think, $36 a year, but you can access some of their free visuals. And I think there might be some other organizations that would be in our resource list that are offering free memberships for a short period of time. And so those are all different resources that you can utilize to help develop and build communication supports. The other thing that we want to do is we really want to promote social communication for individuals. Some of the things that you can do is you can try to set up highly preferred activities in hard to reach places. I call those teachable moments. And so you are putting the individual in the position where they need to use their communication skills. And so that's another place where you can provide those visuals so that they are there, and you can coach and support the student to have access and use some of those other alternative supports for communication. Moving on to the next strategy, which is establish a daily schedule and create routines. How many of you are creatures of habit? Do you use to-do lists? Do you use your calendar app? Do you use, I have two calendar apps. I have an Outlook calendar app. I have a couple of Google calendars. And that is probably one of the first things I do each day is I go in and I take a look at my calendar. And that tells me what I'm going to be doing throughout the day. And I would imagine that many of you are similar and you also use your calendars or you create to-do lists. One of the things right now that is helpful if you think about our world of visuals is many grocery stores are adding environmental supports all around their building so that we can all walk certain directions. And so these are additional visuals that we all are becoming reliant upon and utilize, and they're very, very helpful. And for individuals with autism, using daily schedules will help establish a new routine and a structure for the day, since we know that structure is very, very different than what it has been. A daily schedule organizes the child's environment and it creates predictability. For individuals with autism, like I've mentioned, changes are hard, transitions are hard, and these new routines that we're creating right now, those are also very hard. So creating a schedule can help the individual see what's coming next throughout the day, and it may also alleviate some of the stress and anxiety of not knowing, and thereby hopefully decreasing challenging behavior that you might see due to no routine or a lack of a routine. So putting in place a new schedule right now when things are constantly changing means that things won't be perfect, and that's okay. Schedules don't need to be fancy. This is one that was developed on a computer. The next one right here is actually one that a family sent me last night, and mom has created, just typed out a schedule and they hang it on their basement door, and everybody goes to that, and that outlines what it is that they're going to be doing. So you can have a written schedule, you can use photos, you can snap a photo with your phone and send it to the printer or put it on a document, but it doesn't need to even be that fancy. You can use a good old pad of paper and a pencil and put your drawing skills to the test and draw some stick figures. That is a low-tech support. But what you want to make sure you're doing is you want to make sure that you're matching the system to the needs of the individual. And so we have some students who are more impacted, and they might need a more concrete level of support. And so that might be an object. And so you can match objects to different areas within your environment. So you might have a certain object that means kitchen, and you teach the child to take that object, pick it up, and then take it to a specific location in the kitchen. If you're going to do some direct instruction or working one-on-one with a student or your child, you might take a pencil, and that is the indicator that it's time to work. And so you can use different objects and you can create an object schedule. The next level would be a photo. And so you can take a digital photo or find photos on Google, and you can pretty much find a photo of anything now. And you can create a schedule with photos of, and even better if you can get your child in that picture. The next level would be a like an icon. I don't know if you're familiar with Boardmaker, or I mentioned Lesson Picks, or there's lots of different visual libraries. And these are pictures kind of like clip art, and they may or may not have a written word with them, but they're a little bit more abstract. That digital picture is very concrete because it's a picture or photo of the actual item, whereas an icon is a little bit more abstract. The next level up would be that written word. So it could be a photo schedule with a written word, or it could be the icon schedule with a written word. And then you could use those to promote some literacy skills as well if you're working with an individual who is a reader. The next level is that written schedule. And as you can see on the screen here, these are all written schedules. The photo on the right is one of my favorite apps. It is called First Then Visual Schedule HD. And it has, this is just one view that you're able to see. It has the picture, and you can see it integrates the real photo. So you can take a photo if it's on your phone, or if it's on an iPad, you can use the camera and take a picture, which is nice because then you can individualize it a little bit. They also have a photo library or icon library that you can use. And so you can pair that with the Word and create many different schedules. So you can create a schedule for your whole day, and then if there's activities that need to be broken down a little bit more, those are called mini schedules. And so you can also create mini schedules. So a schedule tells you where to go, and a mini schedule tells you what to do when you get there. And so in this resource that we're going to be sharing, there are examples of all of the different schedules that I just explained, from that most concrete level, which is the object schedule, all the way up to a written word schedule. And there's even individuals who will use just the Notes app in an iPhone and create their daily schedule there. It now has that option of having the little circle bullet, so you can check things off as you go. So if you have an iPhone, or I don't know if there's an Android similar Notes capability, but that might be something that you have access to. The other thing is, if you're going to use a technology, you need to make sure that the student has a preference for technology, because we have students have special interests, and so they may not have an interest in technology, and so you might be better off using one of the picture schedules, paper, a low-tech support. So that is information on daily schedules and creating routines. And you just want to, you know, I have a schedule, and I have it posted on the wall for each one of my kids. And we've done a schedule that is very routine for each day. They have to be up by a certain time, and their activities are the same each day. And that's what kind of works for my family and my children. Each of my kids' schedule is a little bit different based on their needs. So I highly recommend making something that is going to be very easy for you to implement, easy to update, and work for your entire family. So the next area that we are going to cover, especially when we're talking about working from home or remote learning, is making sure that we have identified a place. And so it's really important that as we are establishing some of these new routines and new ways of providing instruction or working, that we foster an environment that allows for engagement in those specific activities. So you really want to take a look at that environmental arrangement and think about where different activities are going to be happening. So you want to design specific areas where learning might take place, or where work might take place. And this is going to help define what activities will happen in what location. And it's really important also, and it might be helpful for individuals on the spectrum, if you label that area, so they know if there's a table that they're working at, that that's going to be their work area. If they're going to take a break in a different location, throw a break, you know, a sign up on the wall that says break area. Throughout a school day in a school environment, there are labels throughout many different classrooms, throughout the hallways, and so students are very often familiar with different labels and might have their own labeling system dependent upon the structure that the teacher provides within that classroom. And so labeling does provide another element or another way to add structure and routine to that day. You can also set aside, like I said, where that instruction, or if you're going to be doing academic or remote learning areas for that. And then you might want to also define a different area where breaks or more recreational activities or downtime activities might occur. And that just helps a student really get into that routine so that they can switch activities seamlessly, because transitions are very, very difficult. So for some learners, some of the families that I've worked with, they have said it's been helpful to keep schoolwork in the student's book bag. And that is part of their daily routine, where they'll have the student or their child grab their book bag, and whoever is facilitating instruction that day has already put the work in there. And that also just keeps one aspect of normalcy from what the child was used to prior to the chaos that we're in right now. But that will also help. You can keep that book bag in that remote learning area. Another thing to have handy in that area are any sensory supports. Sensory systems are probably very out of whack right now. I've been talking to one of my friends who has a son on the spectrum, and she was sharing how she's trying to figure out if it's sensory overload or if he's hypo right now, underactive, and why he's engaging in all of these different sensory behaviors that she hasn't seen before. And so we did talk a lot about stress and anxiety of the new routine, but also then what can we do? And so during his instruction time, she is providing fidgets and more strategies that will help regulate him, but also breaking that schedule up and making sure that there's physical activity built into that daily schedule, as well as access to break cards so that he can help and begin to self-regulate. And if you keep your toys next to you, it's also a really handy way to know where they're all at so that you can quickly and easily sanitize them. So one of the next areas that we're going to talk about is supporting behavior. And there is lots of different ways that we can support behavior. And I always want to start off with talking a little bit about behavior, because behavior is communication. So if you're seeing an increase in behavior at home, think of it as communication. Think of it as putting your detective hat on and trying to peel back the layers to identify what is that child trying to communicate with that behavior. Some individuals may not be able to verbally express their feelings right now. There's lots of fear, there's lots of frustration, and lots of anxiety just due to so many different changes that are happening in our world right now. So for students who do have verbal language, you also might see a reduction in their ability to access their words and thereby an increase in behavior. And so it doesn't matter if the student is verbal or nonverbal. If we're seeing behavior, it is communication. And so there's lots of different things that you can do. Mainly, I always start off with putting some communication supports in place, like we started off talking about, because that's going to help the individual gain access to some words. But also, there's other things that we can do to help calm some of that stress and anxiety. So some of the ways that we, I'm not clicking here, I gotta click ahead. Some of the things that ways that we can support behavior is by providing positive reinforcement. And so it's really important that you do a quick assessment and make sure that you have access to all of the different reinforcers that your child likes or enjoys, and probably need to stock up on those as much as you can. So when we can kind of identify a toolbox, that allows us to have lots and lots of resources to be able to choose from, so that we don't have to use the same reinforcer, because students and children get bored with the same reinforcer. So we want to make sure that we have plenty to choose from. And then when we provide that positive reinforcement, we want to make sure that we use behavior specific praise. So instead of just saying good job, you want to label the behavior, nice writing, or I like the way you did something, instead of just saying good job, because that doesn't really tell us what the student did well. And if we're trying to increase behavior, we want to be specific and label what it is we're seeing. If you are supporting your child when they have behavior, and this is going to be one that we probably all need to take a step back and take a deep breath when we have behavior, we want to make sure that we respond calmly when that behavior occurs. It's so important to stay calm, because if we express anger or frustration, we're only going to add fuel to the fire and probably see an increase in behavior from the child. So when we can remain calm and provide that safety for students, it's going to help support them to learn how to calm themselves. And we'll talk a little bit about other self-calming strategies in just a minute. There are lots of different strategies, and I don't have a ton of them in here since we're only on the call for a short amount of time today. But in the resources that you will receive, there are lots and lots of different resources and strategies to help support challenging behavior. So those are going to include choice boards. So you can provide the child with lots of different choices throughout their day, and you can do choice boards for snack, you can do choice boards for break time activities, you can do choice boards for anything throughout your day. So choice boards are a great strategy. There's going to be some rule cards, and I have an example of that coming up. Again, social narratives and social stories are a great way to help support behavior, not necessarily when a child is melting down. However, it's a great teaching tool to, to teach a behavior with. I'm working for boards, which is a token economy where we have the student working for different, they identify a reinforcer, and then they can earn a token or a star or a sticker. And once they get a certain number, then they can exchange it for a reinforcer. And then also making sure that we have a good variety of what those reinforcers are. Another way that we can support behavior is really help the child to understand their emotions, label their emotions, and then help them calm. Managing emotions and regulating behavior is a skill that we have to teach, just like any other skill, math or reading. It's really important to teach students coping skills, how to calm themselves down, how to reduce that anxiety, what does it look like? And so we will have some strategies that really identify how you can begin to label the child's behavior and help provide some calming activities. And you can also, as the child is escalated, you can model some of those calming activities as you are trying to coach that child to calm down. And then also use positive self-talk. So we talked a little bit about positive reinforcement. And reinforcement is really, really important to use throughout the day. You truly want to identify as many reinforcers as you can and make sure that you have them when you are working or providing whatever type of remote instruction it is that you are going to provide. Because you want the student to be able to finish the task, and you want to very quickly provide that reinforcer. One thing that has been very helpful that I truly love, this is a time timer, but there's lots of digital timers that you can download apps for them on all different systems. And so using a kitchen timer or setting an alarm is a great way that you can use, and you can pair it with a reinforcer. So one of the families that I keep in close contact with, they his reinforcer is YouTube. And so he will do a couple activities and then he'll have 5 or 10 minutes on YouTube. So mom sets a timer. So it's a visual timer, so he can see that time decrease, and that helps him transition back to work. So using that timer is very, very important and very helpful. A timer, or I'm sorry, I guess I'm clicking a step ahead. Also, when you finish your remote learning tasks or throughout your instruction or the work that you are doing, you want to make sure that you provide that reinforcement right away. You always want to immediately reinforce, because if the child has to wait for it, it lessens, they'll be less likely to finish their work in the future. You also may want to consider increasing the frequency in which you're giving those reinforcers throughout the day. It can be dependent upon seeing good behavior or expected behavior, or you can do non-contingent, so you just throw out reinforcers throughout the day, which will increase positive behavior that you want to see more of. On the screen, you'll see a first then board. This is another great strategy that I use often to support behavior. Premack principle, first you do this, then you get that. At the dinner table, we know that as first you eat your vegetables, and then you can have dessert. But using a first then schedule, especially when the first activity might be work and then the second activity might be a reinforcer, is a great way to structure activities and build in that reinforcement quickly. So first you do this, then you'll get some type of reinforcement. Another strategy that I talked about a moment ago is an I'm working for chart. And this is an example of an I'm working for chart. And so this child would have to get 4 stars before they're able to earn their reinforcer. And for this child, I might also pair a choice board. So I might have lots of different reinforcers that the student can grab and put on that choice board for what they're working for. On the right hand of the screen, you can see another strategy. This is the choice board on top. It has what he's working for, but then inside Brady's tickets, he has what we call a punch card. And this is another great strategy. So he has to do 4 different activities. He gets a punch each time he does his job, and then he gets to choose from that choice board what he's working for. And he is a lover of Orange Crush. And so there's not too many times that he will pick something different. Here's another example. Punch card. This is another punch card. So this you can have it where you see 1 through 10. It could be 1 through 3. It could be 1 through 5. So it's really dependent upon the student's needs and how often they need reinforcement, and then how many punches they're going to need to get that big reinforcer. The one on the right of your screen is a child that was working for movie time. And so he was earning a certain amount of punches, and you can see that this is 200 punches. He was able to earn a certain number of punches throughout the day. So it might seem like it's going to take him a really, really long time to earn 200 punches. But it was a system that we built up over time, and it did take him a good month, I think, to be able to earn that movie. Here's another example. Creating rules. That is another way to help support behavior. When you can identify the expectations of what's going to happen, it helps make that environment a little bit more predictable and helps the child understand what's going to be happening. So when we write rule cards, we typically choose 3 to 5 rules. If you do more than 5, it's too much information for that child to focus on. And so these are skills that we really want that child to be doing. I want the eyes watching. I don't often say eye contact. I just want their attention. So I want them to be focused on what it is that we're working on. Ears need to be listening, quiet voice, body needs to be still, hands need to be down, and then we need to complete and do our work. Another one, which is just 3, ready to work, feet on floor, look at teacher, quiet hands or hands down. So those are just 2 examples of what a rule card could be. And another thing is when you're doing providing support like this, you can use your voice to explain it, but then when you need to prompt the child, it's important to go up and point to the number 1, eyes watching, to gain their attention, direct their attention, because if we always use a verbal, oftentimes we create a child who is dependent upon our verbal instruction. And so it's one of those hardest prompts to fade. So anytime that you remember, you can gesture to the visual, you can pick it up. Any way that you can do that without your voice is going to help promote independence. So moving on, the last area that we're going to talk about for supporting behavior is if you're seeing behavior at home, it's likely that school has seen some level of behavior as well. We have students who have no behavior at school and they hold it together all day and then come home and lose it at home because we are that safe environment. And so right now during this time, we might be seeing behavior that we haven't seen before, but it is helpful to take a look at the IEP. And that's that plan that really defines how that child is going to be supported in the classroom. And then the FBA or the behavior intervention plan. And you could take a look and see what strategies were effective in that classroom or school environment and see if you're able to replicate any part of that plan in the home environment. If you have questions about what that might look like, don't hesitate to reach out to the child's teacher or to the case manager or support people who have worked with the child when they're providing instruction or in a work environment so that you can get some extra help on how some of those supports were implemented, or just another person to bounce ideas off of. Because if you're reaching out to the teacher, they probably know your child pretty well and might be able to give you some different ideas or even say, oh yeah, we have a strategy for that. Let me mail it to you or email it to you so that you can have access to some of those supports that were effective. Another thing that is really important is if your child engages in aggressive behavior, make sure you have a plan for where everyone's going to go at home, where the siblings are going to go, where is their safe spot. We are experiencing, you know, a time that we've never been through where we have some individuals who are experiencing such severe and challenging behavior. And those circumstances are becoming more difficult, especially if it's a child who is 250 pounds and very, very strong. Our primary goal right now is to keep everyone as safe as possible. And I have worked with families and I have heard families who are really struggling with how do we do remote learning because our students, our children are so environmental specific. So school doesn't happen at home. School happens at school. And so we're seeing an increase in behavior. And so we really need to take it back and start really, really small so that we can avoid any of those big behaviors and really focus on safety. Because the last thing that we want to do is have to call 911, have to call the police, because we want to stay away from the hospital as much as we can. So here's one last strategy I think is a good one for not only the individuals that we're working with, but also a good reminder for ourselves to stop and breathe and take those 5 deep breaths. So as we move on to the next, socializing remotely. Individuals with autism, you know, this is a time where we're seeing individuals who are increasing, seeing an increase in their isolation and also in how lonely they are. And so we can be very intentional about how we are going to focus on increasing some of those social relationships. I was talking to one parent who her son doesn't have too many friends, and she was saying he doesn't have any of his peers' phone numbers to be able to reach out to him. And so he truly doesn't have many friends that he's talking to right now. And so one of the things that we problem solved through was the mom supporting her son to email the teacher and share his contact information and pass that along to 3 of the other students, and then having that student reach back out so that we can create some of those social opportunities, because sometimes the only time individuals on the spectrum do socialize is when they go to work or when they go to that school each day. And so we need to be very intentional on how we are going to set up some of those social situations. One of the great things I think that we have access to right now are so many different types of technology. So we have access to talking on the phone, we have access to texting, and there are a ton of different apps that allow individuals to communicate. We now have many other tools available to us for free: Zoom, Google Meets, WebEx. There's lots of different systems that are available so individuals can use video calling. And so you can do FaceTime, you can do one of those Google Hangouts, but the individual might need a little bit of support setting up the system and then reaching out to another individual to communicate. So those are some really good resources, and it's important to make sure that we schedule time throughout our day for socializing, especially if that's not an area that we're comfortable doing. It's nice to add it to the schedule so that we know it happens. When we add it to the schedule, it's like the law. It's going to happen. There's lots of other ways that we can increase socializing from a remote situation. We can, on your screen are lots of different examples. In the handout, you'll get a written copy of this, so I'm not going to read it, but there's lots of different things that we can do through writing. Pull back an old pencil and paper. Actually, Hallmark, I think right now, if you Google Hallmark, they're giving away free greeting cards. So you can sign up to get free greeting cards, and then all you have to do is find a stamp and mail it. And then we already talked about some of those video options. And then lastly, I just wanted to highlight, as we really wrap up and focus on tips for remote learning, the best thing I think that anybody can do at this point is make sure you communicate, have open lines of communication with the school, with the teachers, as they're navigating how to provide this instruction. And often didn't have the opportunity to do it before. So there are so many different resources out there that are helping with e-learning. And also there's great tutorials that we will be sharing also on how to work with your student, with your child. How do we teach? How do we provide that instruction? What does that look like? Can we model? How can we provide that support? The other recommendation is use visual strategies. Individuals with autism are primarily visual learners. And so anytime we can support an individual by providing a strategy in that visual format, it's going to help. I always say think duct tape, not for the individual that you're working with, but for yourself so that you don't overtalk. Think duct tape to help reduce your verbals. It's really hard to not talk. We are humans, we are social beings, and so our natural thing to do is to talk, but stop talking. Use your visual strategies. As you reach out to the schools, make sure that you have everything organized, that your work area, when you are providing instruction or working one-on-one with a student, even if it's reading a book, that you have all the materials that you need in that setting. And another thing that you might want to brainstorm with the teachers is how much support does the child need, because that's going to help you identify is what the work is the work that you're able to provide right now. Is it really just for enrichment? Is it just practicing some of those skills? Or is it for instruction? And if all of these ideas, kind of get thrown out the window, this is a perfect time to really focus on some of those functional skills. Brushing teeth, making a snack, making dinner, cleaning. And so there's so many different skills that we can teach right in our homes that we have access to. So that is all of the information that I have prepared for today. Happy to take any questions.
Nikki, that was fantastic. Thank you. We do have a couple questions. One is they were wondering how best to support my student with a significant disability through remote learning. They cannot access technology without parent support, and many parents cannot support their child's e-learning because of their own jobs. Any advice for this particular person?
Absolutely. I think I ended right on that. And you're right. There's so much that is out of our control right now. We can't control who has access to technology. But what we can do is just facilitate any type of learning that we can. And that might look a little bit different right now. Maybe it is creating a snack. Maybe it's pouring cereal into the bowl and adding milk. Maybe it is focusing on some of our morning routine or evening routine, because those are all skills that are that we can teach. So go back and think about some of those naturally occurring chores or activities throughout your day. And those are probably just as important as some of those academic skills that the student might be learning.
Excellent, thank you. Um, we have a question about having some social behavior mapping. Are we going to have that included in the resources?
There are resources on that. Yes,
Excellent,
and if you need more problem solving, because they're very general, just reach out to me.
great. So a lot of the other questions are around where things are going to be posted. And just to clarify, everything that we have talked about today, the presentation, the resources, as well as any apps that she mentioned, we'll have those highlighted in there, will be on the autismcollegeandcareer.com website, and that was sent out to you, attendees throughout the webinar. In addition, we are recording today, so the recording as well as the presentation will be available there. And look for that in the next day or so, by the end of the week, to be posted. And then we have some additional resources that we're going to be having approved by ISPE, and those will be added. So when you go to the ATTA site, by tomorrow, we will be having those resources posted. So they're not live now. We really were cutting it close down to the wire to get this out to you. In addition, check back on that website because Nikki will be adding things. She's very passionate, as you can tell, about the supporting students who are on the spectrum, and she has developed some fantastic resources. In addition to that, everyone who attended and everyone who registered, all 1,000 of you, will be receiving an email from ICSPS with the resources and the link to the website so you know what's up. So you'll be receiving that through email as well. I'm looking real quick for any other questions. Nikki, any other closing comments?
Just, we're doing the best that we can right now, and don't let it stress you out. Just reel back, and this is a great time to start fresh with adding in some new strategies and new supports.
Excellent, thank you. And a couple of you have been asking, can you share these resources? Please do. Once they're
Absolutely.
posted, share everything. So with that, thank you so much, and Nikki, and thank you all for attending today and spending an hour with us. And we'll be in touch. Thank you.